years, Google was held up as, the gold standard for workplace culture. But it turns out, behind the colorful logos and the free food, a very different story was playing out. Today, we're going to look at what happens when employees at one of the most powerful companies on Earth decide to speak up, and the incredible personal cost of breaking that silence. On the surface, the promise was just irresistible. A culture built on innovation, guided by that famous motto, "Don't be evil." But for some, the reality was a complete 180, a world of alleged retaliation, of dissent being silenced, and some really intense psychological pressure. And that's the core conflict we're digging into. So, how did all these internal issues finally burst into the open? Well, it all came to a head on one single day. A day when the silence was shattered, not just in one office, but all around the globe. Okay, so here's what lit the fuse. A bombshell report comes out revealing that a top executive got a $90 million payout after facing credible misconduct allegations. That was the final straw. On November 1st, 2018, over 20,000 Google employees walked off the job. This wasn't just a small protest. It was a massive global statement against a culture they felt protected the powerful and silenced everyone else.
And this was the message on signs everywhere, from Tokyo to London to Mountain View. Time's up tech, time's up Google. It was powerful. They were borrowing the language of a global movement to demand accountability right in their own workplace.
But taking a stand like that so publicly, it carried a really heavy price. And to understand that price, you have to look at the individual stories. Think of these as the case files for the people who led the charge, and who would soon find out the true cost of their activism. First up, we have Meredith Whittaker. She was a leading AI ethics researcher at Google and a key organizer of the Walkout, a really respected voice inside the company. After the walkout, Whittaker said everything changed. She reported being removed from her leadership roles. She felt this immense pressure to abandon the very AI ethics work she was hired to pioneer. Her entire career path was just suddenly and drastically altered. And her own words really nail it. She didn't see what was happening to her as some isolated incident. For her, it was part of a clear pattern of retaliation against workers who speak out. And it wasn't just her. Next up is Claire Stapleton. She was a marketing manager, another central organizer of the Walkout, and her story sounds eerily similar, which just goes to show how consistent this alleged pattern was.
So Stapleton said she was demoted. Her responsibilities were just gone. She was effectively sidelined. And it got so bad that she says she was told to go on medical leave, which, let's be honest, can feel like a classic way to push someone out the door without actually firing them.
And this pattern wasn't just limited to the Walkout organizers. You have to look at the case of Dr. Timnit Gebru. She was a star AI researcher co-leading the ethical AI team. Her exit from Google in 2020 just set off another massive firestorm. The whole thing started over a research paper. She'd co-authored a paper that was critical of biases in the very same AI technology that is absolutely core to Google's business. As she put it, her experience made her feel that Google doesn't want to engage with research that challenges its business.
So you see these individual stories and you have to ask, how does a system let this happen over and over again? Let's zoom out and look at the corporate structures that, whether it's intentional or not, can end up protecting the institution over the individual.
Okay, this is a really crucial concept to understand: gray area retaliation. We're not always talking about things that are clearly illegal, like firing someone for a protected reason. We're talking about the subtle stuff. Demotions, being taken off important projects, being stripped of your work. The kinds of things that are absolutely devastating to your career, but are legally really hard to prove as retaliation. Which brings up the big question, right? Isn't this exactly what HR is for? Why didn't human resources seem to be the solution for these employees? Well, this slide pretty much breaks down the frustrating loop. An employee complains about being sidelined, but HR's main job is often to protect the company from legal risk. So they look at it, and if the manager's behavior isn't breaking a specific law, it gets tagged as not illegal. And what happens then? No formal action is required. The behavior continues, and the employee is left feeling totally alone. Now, with all the public outcry, leadership did respond. The CEO, Sundar Pichai, came out and said, "We recognize that we have not always gotten everything right." And the company did make some changes, like ending forced arbitration for certain claims. But for many of the employees who went through this, those words and actions just felt like too little, too late. And that gets us to the deep, personal toll of this gray area retaliation. It goes so much further than just a job title. It's about being made to feel invisible.
Just think about the psychological damage. We're talking severe anxiety and burnout. A total loss of professional identity when your dream job turns into a nightmare, your career gets derailed, and this deep self-doubt starts to creep in. Because when the system pushes you aside, you can't help but start to question yourself.
And this right here is maybe the single most important idea in this whole story. The ultimate punishment wasn't always getting fired. It was the slow, quiet, and methodical process of being erased from the work you loved and the career you had worked so hard to build.
So after looking at the protests, the personal stories, the systemic issues, what's the real lesson here? What should we actually take away from this peek inside Google? Well, first, the scale of these problems is just undeniable, and the money proves it. In 2021, Google agreed to a $118 million settlement in a gender discrimination lawsuit. That covered over 15,000 women. A number that big tells you this was not about a few isolated cases. It points to huge systemic problems.
So what does this story really tell us? It shows that a Best Place to Work award can easily be hiding a toxic culture. It teaches us that retaliation can absolutely wreck your life, even if it's not technically illegal. It confirms that, a lot of the time, corporate power structures are designed to protect leadership first and foremost. And most of all, it shows the profound hidden costs of just speaking up.
Which leaves us with one last big question. If a company's whole identity is built on the idea of don't be evil, who inside that company ultimately gets to decide what evil actually is? And what happens when the people at the bottom and the people at the top have a profoundly different answer?